My name is Laura St. Clair. I am here. I'm a member of the American Hanoverian Society Education Committee, and today we're gathering together to do a little interview and discussion with Kasey Cannon. Kasey is an adult amateur dressage rider that so many of us have come to know over the last couple of years with her stallion, Diesel. Diesel is a full brother to Damsey, and Kasey was just in Germany training. So we wanted to schedule a time to talk to her and learn about that experience and her stallion and what's happening. And I have a personal experience with this stallion's offspring as well, and really excited to talk. So thanks very much. Okay, let's start off with our questions. I think coming from the AHS office, Emma?
So kind of right off the bat, why did you choose to train with Helen?
Well, honestly, Damsey. I would say Damsey was sort of the connector with all of this. And my horse and Damsey are full brothers. And I bought my horse in early 2016, which is really about the same time that Helen was offered the ride on Damsey as a 14-year-old Grand Prix stallion. And so I was on a journey with them, watching year after year how Helen just did better and better and better with this amazing horse. And for me, it was really fun to see maybe the genetic potential of where my horse could actually go one day. So, from day one, watching her career develop with him, I sort of went on this journey and felt like I had a front row seat into their 6-year journey with us learning at the same time. So I think I really watched almost every test that they did, often in the middle of the night. And, Helen did an amazing job with him year after year. He got better and better. I swear Damsey looked younger at 19 than it did at 14. She obviously doesn't really need an introduction. She's a German Olympic rider. She broke the 90% barrier with Damon Hill. She's been to numerous world championships, European championships, World Cups, and the Bundeschampionat. And with Damsey, she herself was on the German Olympic team, the A squad. She was ranked as high as 4th at one in the FEI International World Dressage Ranking List, and they finished a spectacular 3rd in Gothenburg at the FEI Dressage World Cup Finals in 2019 with a whopping 86%. I think it was really quite a memorable test. I think a lot of people remember that test. So for me, if I could have picked anyone in the entire world to go train with, I felt Helen, we had some sort of connection because we had 2 full siblings. And I felt in some ways like she already knew my horse a little bit before we went, because I think character-wise, there's a lot of similarities between the 2. So I will say this was a trip that was 2 years in the making. It was a long time for me to get there. It started 2 years ago when I reached out to Damsey's, one of his owners, Susanna Meyer, to see if possibly training with them with her would even be an option. And she put me immediately in touch with Helen. And literally 2 years ago, this opportunity was set in motion. Obviously, COVID, we had many COVID delays. And, we did some interval training with her through video lessons a few times. And by the time we finally landed at her stable, at least she had some interaction with us already and experience. But it was definitely 2 years in the making, and Helen would be my number 1 person for going over and training with.
Wow, that's incredible. So I guess my next question kind of segues into riding wise. Do you think you changed as a rider during your training, and what training skills did you take away from this experience?
I would say I most definitely changed as a rider. I really started to see things more black and white with training. I definitely rode a little bit more in a gray zone. I don't have that much experience, especially at the FEI levels. And, if I would sort of be asking for maybe a 7 and a 70% effort from my horse, and I would be happy with this because it was nice, it was easy, it felt nice. And when you go and see Helen's training barn and her train, she's got 3 trainers working under her, and 35 horses a day going through their indoor arena, you realize they're not going for 6s and 7s. They are going for 8s, 9s, and 10s. It's very black and white. The system is very methodical and logical for the horses, and there is a standard, and the standard is always kept very high. So, you know, a 6 and a 7 is not adequate. And for me, this was, you know, it's a crucial thing to learn. I think it's also a difference maybe between the average amateur and the average professional, where the amateur is sort of okay with the 6 and a 7, and that the professional always has the standard really high. And, you know, for the horse, it's always very clear what the expectations are. Thankfully, my horse is very trainable, and he adapted to sort of this new level of expectation very well. And one of the best things about our sport is, you know, the goalposts just keep moving. The more you learn in this sport, the harder it gets, and the farther away, you know, 100%, nobody, I don't think, is ever going to get 100% on a test, but you really never finish. You never get to the end. And that's, I think, one of the most difficult parts about this sport, but it's also one of the most beautiful. So, and if you have a horse and a rider and a trainer that are willing to continually push forward as the goalposts move, I think this is how you get to be have a good Grand Prix combination, and hopefully a good international Grand Prix combination. So, yeah, I think training over there definitely helped me realize how far the goalposts are, and also that, you know, you just continually keep moving towards them.
Great. So, you know, kind of adding on, as you were saying, you know, the goalpost move ahead, you're always working towards something. In your blog, you talked about your made-up term, the quote-unquote frozen rider syndrome. And it seems like something that, you know, a lot of riders go through, of like kind of, you know, mental block of, okay, like I got to get over this. You know, was there a moment you remember where something clicked and you just figured out, okay, I've got this now, I can overcome this, you know, that's a thing of the past?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I've overcome it, because we still haven't. We've shown once in last year. I think partly from COVID, partly because he was available for breeding, and partly because we were going to Germany and we're in between I1 and I2. But I will say, Helen had me within a few weeks of getting there. She said, "You're ready. Let's try the I2 test." So, you know, we warm up and I start the I2 test, and immediately, like literally right when I turned down center line, it was like, oh, here's that frozen rider syndrome. And then I'm afraid I just ride through the test. You know, I don't really make corrections. I don't check in with Diesel. And the test was actually not so bad. It was clean, and, you know, but after the test, I let Helen know, like, you know, I have a little bit of an issue here because I haven't shown that much. And especially lately, I really haven't shown much with COVID. So, and she instantly suggested, okay, every Wednesday, we're going to ride a test. And every week we ride the test, and then we work on things that need improvement. And that's so logical. And it's also genius, because at home, you know, I would really only ride through the test a few days before the show. So especially if we move up to a new level, I'd only ridden the test a few times. We'd school parts of it, but putting the whole thing together, we only really did before going to a show. So this idea of actually just riding the test once a week, so that you've ridden maybe the test, 20 times before you actually go down center line in a show ring, is somewhat genius. I'm lucky in that Diesel doesn't anticipate. I know some horses you can't school like this, because they learn the test and then they know what's coming, and then they sort of take over. Diesel doesn't do that. He knows what's coming, but he waits for me to ask for the movement or my questions. So we can actually school the test once a week. And I personally, as a rider, I really need this. I get nervous, and then Diesel gets a little bit lost. So, so this was super. She also suggested that we ride our first I2. They call it test of choice in Germany, or maybe in all of Europe, but we call it HC, which is a French term for hors concours. Which basically means you can ride the test just like you do in a show, but the rough French meaning is you're exception from the competition. So We would get a score sheet, we would get a score, and we would get comments from the judge, but it's actually not an officially recorded score. So I can go through the motions of riding the whole test. I can get all the notes from the judge, but I don't have to have the pressure that it's actually going to be a recorded score for Diesel and for myself. And when, especially I think when moving to the I2 where you have Piaffe and Passage for the first time, riding the test HC is actually a great idea. And like Helen said, just ride, ride him like you ride him at home, and don't worry, you're not getting a score. So that was also super helpful.
So what do you think was the most impactful thing you learned during your training that you will take with you into competition?
I would say to keep riding, and this seems so simple and logical, and when you're on the horse and you're the one riding, it's not easy. So really to expect for me to go to a show and expect the same horse that I have at home, to expect that and behave like I do at home. So I am the same rider in the warm up as I am in the show ring. I realized a few years ago that I would get nervous at shows. And like I said, I don't have that much FEI experience. I've done 4 I1s, I think, with Diesel and 1 I1 freestyle. And we've done a handful of Pre-St. George's. I had 1 horse before Diesel that I did 2 Pre-St. George's on, I think 15 years ago, 17 years ago, 2005. So for me, it's a big deal. It would be a lot easier if I had more experience because I could bring that to the table with Diesel, but I don't. So I realized a few years ago that when we go to a show and we're in the warm up, that I would ride different. I normally am very vocal with him. I communicate with him all the time, tell him good boy, give pats on the neck, like always positively reinforce him. And when I would go to a show, I would realize I kind of abandoned him. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't let him know he's doing things great. And because of that, I would start to sort of lose his confidence because he was like, what's happening? Where's my mom? So, and then I worked on that for the last couple of years. And I think the next big step for me, which just helps riding a test a week, is to be the same rider as I am now in the warm up that I need to be in the arena. And granted, you can't talk to them, but you can give them a pat on the neck. You can let them know and communicate more and keep riding more in the show ring, and really do my best to not let the show aspect affect the quality of our ride. I will say it also really helped going to Herning, Denmark. Helen took me with her to a World Cup qualifier, which was amazing and somewhat mind-blowing. And to watch her in the warm-up and then in the show ring to watch some of these other horses. Obviously, there was some top riders from Europe there. Warm up and then go in the show ring. It was also really educational to see how they rode in the warm up, how they rode in the arena. A lot of the horses actually really just light up in the show ring, and they're happy, they're confident, they put on a show. And I think this is a testament to really good training, good riding, and then also show experience.
Is there something you experienced that you almost kind of wish didn't happen or wish it had happened in a different way necessarily?
Yeah, yes. I would say now that I have experience traveling to and from Europe with a horse, which not so many people have that opportunity. It's quite amazing, actually, that we can even fly them. I will say, yeah, I wish I had known now what I knew when we left. And really the only things we're dealing with the flights. We flew LAX into Liège, and we were in a 777 cargo plane. Actually, the whole entire plane was filled with cargo, and Diesel and a foal, 9-month-old foal, were the only 2 horses on the flight. It actually took, can we hang on just a second? My aunt's TV just came on. So.
Because that was good, what you were saying.
Okay, so we flew from LAX into Liège, and it was actually interesting to even try to get a flight out. There's not very many horses flying from the US into Europe. It took about a month for me to get on a flight with Diesel. We had 2 mares come up in that time, but obviously we can't fly him with a mare. So after a month, we got on a flight. It was a 777 cargo plane. Diesel and a 9-month-old foal were the only horses on the flight. And I was the only passenger, which was crazy and kind of like really fun. It was actually probably the most fun flight I've ever been on. But I was under the impression that our equipment would be basically put in with our personal luggage, like the pilot's luggage, my luggage, and that it would be accessible right when we landed into Liège. So this was not the case. Our equipment was actually packaged in with the Qatar Airlines cargo, which was all bundled in these big pallets. And when we got into Liège, we landed around 4 a.m. and it was quite a bit colder than Southern California. I didn't have Diesel's blankets because they were packaged in with his cargo, and they really should have been put inside the horse with him. And then when we got into where the horses unload, I got the foal and Diesel unloaded into a stall, and I went back for the hay nets. Because it was 4 a.m., there was really limited staff at the Liège airport, and that day, I guess not that many horses were traveling. Diesel and this foal were the only horses in the whole equine part of the airport. So there was no one there. There was no hay. And I went back to get the hay nets for the 2 horses, and someone had already taken the hay nets along with the horse box. So there was a little window where it was a bit stressful. Everyone ended up just fine. Our transport arrived. They had plenty of hay. I got my equipment out of the Qatar Airlines, whatever the customs was, and everyone was good. But in hindsight, I wish I had known that I really needed to put his blankets inside the actual horse box.
So if horses could talk, what do you think Diesel would say was his best moment of this trip?
Honestly, I would say it was when I returned from going to meet his big brother. Well, let me just backtrack and say I am a total helicopter mom with my horse. He lives at home. I can see him actually from my office. He knows I think I can see him, and he's very good at communicating. If he needs something, he whinnies. You know, if I'm not out there at first light, he lets me know, hello, breakfast. He sees me right at sunset. If I leave our property, he knows, and then he'll stand at the fence where he can watch the gate, and he'll literally wait for me to come home. And then when I come home, of course, he's the first thing I go and say hi to and make sure everything is okay. So, and at Helen's, he knew I was there all the time. I got there before sunrise. I was there really until almost sunset every day. He knew I was around. He was happy. He had his mom. And the day we went to go see Damsey, you know, we left early. Damsey's now retired and up about 3 hours north of where Helen is at Hegstation Meyer, where he's available for breeding for Germany, or actually all of Europe. And so we left her, and Christine and I left. And Christine is Helen's longtime groom, who was also Damsey's like favorite person on earth. And anyway, we left early in the morning. Went to go see Damsey, spent a few hours with him, which I'll go into that in a minute. But when we returned, it was like dark, and Diesel had his head out the stall window. And when he saw me get out of the car, he just was like whinnying and stomping. And he was very happy to see me, but he was also very upset that I had abandoned him all day. And I think he was just relieved that, you know, I came back. So he has me trained, I think, maybe more than I have him trained.
What was it like to go meet Damsey?
Damsey is incredible. And it was sort of like meeting a rock star, honestly. Like, I'm not really starstruck by people, but with him, it was actually pretty intense and a little emotional. I've idolized and watched him in his, like, the last 6 years of his career. And I have this, you build up this image of these animals. And then when you actually see them in person and how much presence they have, it was very, it was cool. I had tears brimming actually when I walked in and he was in the cross ties and I saw him. It was like, okay, wow, there's Damsey. And it was also very cool to see how happy he was to see Anne Christine. I mean, he was sort of like Diesel, just nicker, and just like, hi, where have you been? Like, and so that was pretty emotional for me to see too, that these animals really have a strong connection to their humans. I will say, I feel like I have Damsey's puppy dog younger brother. Damsey is like, he's very cheeky, and I almost feel like he tries to see what he can get away with. And my horse is definitely doesn't like to be in trouble, and he's very cognizant of trying to, stay in my good graces, which I'm very appreciative of. But it was interesting to see. I think both of them are really quite communicative with people, and they have very good human skills, and they command attention from their people. I'd say they both really seem to be more interested in people than other horses, and they're human. They're humans. But yes, it was amazing to meet him. He did not disappoint.
What has changed, do you think, in Diesel going through this training experience?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say a lot. The whole, we put a fair amount of pressure on him to go over there and sort of like raise the bar, and he stepped up to the plate. And I feel like in some ways he understood the seriousness, and it's probably just a reflection of me being more serious, because often I'm just like this happy-go-lucky and I really love the sport, but I have fun with it. I'm not so serious sometimes. And so we raised the bar on the seriousness, and the more we asked, the more he offered, and he stayed happy and willing through the whole process. I would say he became, the whole connection for me changed. He used to be kind of strong in front, and Helen really had me just get him on his hind leg and not let him be strong in front. And by the end of our training time there, he was so soft and swinging and supple in his back and top line. He carried himself. If I put leg on, if I changed something, it didn't change the contact. He was super light and supple in his neck and throat latch. I would say the feeling for me in the saddle changed a lot. And also, this is also partly because I am not so experienced. Before Germany, whenever I would prepare for a movement or end a movement, I would kind of slow down. I would over-prepare, overthink, like, oh, we're going to half pass. And we would literally slow down to enter the half pass. And after, being in Germany, I can now change things or start movements or end movements where he still is pushing from behind and the tempo's not changing and the brakes aren't coming on. And I think this was a really big revelation for us also. So I feel like, all of his weaknesses up until this point, and probably forever, were always really my fault. So it's just, I needed to learn what was expected and then start executing that. But yeah, I would say he changed quite a lot. And the feeling I have now is, I think, such a great starting point for us to start the big tour, the I2 or the Grand Prix and whatnot.
Do you have any advice that you would give to someone who's, either getting ready to travel to Germany or even just traveling abroad for training?
Yeah, I think for me, I would say be open and be maybe ready for some introspection. It's I'm lucky in that I've moved quite a bit in my life, and I've had times where I've just completely changed my environment and countries or whatever. So I have some experience with this, but when you go and leave your life completely behind and spend 2 months in another country, which really the only commonality for the whole thing was my horse. And you go into someone else's life, and it's really a time where you can look at your own life through a different lens, and you see our culture versus a different culture, different your whole perspective is really changed. And I think there's a real opportunity. It can be maybe a little difficult, or you may like or not like what you see. But I would say just be prepared, be open, and be prepared for like personal growth and self-introspection. I would say be bold. You've really got to step out of your comfort zone, I think, to do something like this, especially for me, because I've always been very conscious of my lack of experience to kind of go and train with one of the best trainers in the world. You know, it was a little bit of a risk. So like, you have to be bold and really be willing to step out of your comfort zone. I think if you're going to grow as a human, as a rider, the best way to do this is to put yourself in these environments. So, like realistically, I would say dress warm. It was cold. I mean, I'm from SoCal. It was warm when I left, and it was freezing the entire time there. I swear the sun would be shining and it was not warm. Like you'd be in the sun and it felt like there was light, but there was no warmth from the sun. It was often, freezing, wind blowing, and you spend a lot of the stable, either in the stable or walking horses around the stable. So dress warm, embrace the food, embrace the cultural differences, bring home the things that you love and try to incorporate those things into your own life when you come home.
I want to ask a quick segue too, if I can. And that is, in terms of the timing, Kasey, I know I kind of followed you along the way, and I was fortunate enough to get over to Germany and actually see you training. But I think that your timing on this was so ideal, and yet was such a hard time for travel in general. But can you kind of walk us through quickly, why you decided that this was the year, and at what point in training? I mean, what were you thinking in terms of the timing for Diesel?
Well, I think we got lucky, actually. And I think if we'd gone earlier, I think we would have benefited perhaps less from this, because, when I went, Diesel's going to be 11 this year. So, and, we were schooling the whole Grand Prix. And I think to be able to go and maximize your time and Helen's time, it was a great time to go. The Passage was new for us, but everything else in the Grand Prix, I think we have a solid start for. We just needed tune up, kind of like get on the gas pedal and tweak up the volume kind of a thing. So for me, it was definitely, I'm actually glad we didn't go a year or two earlier. We started Passage last year. Actually, Hinneman helped us introduce Passage for him. So, and Helen really helped with this a lot. We used to get slow in the Passage, and she just really kind of encouraged me to think of the Passage as a trot. And I think if we'd gone a year or two earlier, we wouldn't have gotten as much out of it, because we just, now we're really, I think, ready to show I2. And it's the perfect time to go when you're really, I think, stepping up to the next big, I think changes are a big step in the test, in the scale. And then also the Piaffe Passage is a really big step for horses. So it ended up being the perfect time to go. And I'm actually thankful that COVID kept us from going for a year.
I wanted to ask a question too. So I remember seeing Diesel way back when he was 6 years old at a Conrad Schumacher clinic, right? And Kasey was just starting some half steps with Diesel. And in addition to his fabulous disposition, I was really impressed. And I was like, wow, he's got a lot of talent he's going to have a lot of talent for these, upper level movements. What was Helen's impression of Diesel?
It was actually really fun. There were often comments she would make, gosh, she's just like Damsey, like in the training or something would happen. And she said, Damsey would always do that too. I know about this. And, and she said she was very supportive, encouraging, and I would say also complimentary. You know, a few times she said, look, you know, Diesel can do everything in the Grand Prix for an 8, and the Piaffe Passage even higher. So, I mean, at that point, and she said, it's really, you know, it's up to you. So like, okay, I mean, it was great. He's a horse capable of anything. And I'm the one that has to step up to the plate and try and bring out his potential. But she had really good things to say about him. And she said, you know, it was nice. She also said that we had done a great job training him, that at 10 years old, he knew all the movements from Grand Prix, and I'm an amateur. I think I terrified her in the very beginning because I'd let her know that Diesel was my second horse in 20 years. And I think because Germans really have a system where they bring up riders, this was sort of terrifying. And I think by the end, it was fun for Helen. And in fact, she said, almost in the last couple of lessons, she said, you know, I have to say, I don't know that I've ever had a horse or a student improve day after day, week after week, like you guys have. And that was also really super. But I think that's also a testament to Diesel's trainability and a testament to our partnership. You know, I've had him for 6 years, and, you know, we've been very consistent in our training, and I've had the same trainer at home for the entire time, Amelia Newcomb, for 6 years. I'm the only one to handle him. And I think we have a really great foundation where we were adaptable to, and we're also both highly trainable. So, yeah.
It's great.
Sorry, go ahead, Emma.
Go ahead, Candice. You're good.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that also, you know, I saw Diesel way back when he was 6, and showing first level, right? It was the last test that you showed first level before you moved to second level.
Was it? Or then maybe we showed for, oh no, he was 6, because I did first and second when he was 6. I did training when he was 5. So that would be correct.
Okay.
In Del Mar.
But yeah, at Del Mar, you cleaned up silver, money, blue ribbons. It was wild. I went to
It's where he winks at the judges, and they always just give them higher scores.
Nice.
But yeah, I met you know, I met up with Kasey, and Diesel was in his stall, and he was, you know, very, very, very quiet in his stall, and I think he was taking a nap, and you know, so just really, you know, a nice horse to have at a show. But it was really impressive when they were in the warm-up arena, and there was a horse ridden by, you know, a top professional that was, I mean, I would say completely out of control, just flying through the air. I think it was birds in the speakers, birds like kind of roosting in the speakers, that was getting to this mare, and she was just like leaping and flying, and, you know, riders and horses were going in all different directions, and Diesel was just like never affected by it. And at one point, the mare, from my point of view, smashed into Diesel, and he just never stopped like doing what he was doing. And I was standing next to Amelia Newcomb, Kasey's trainer, and she said, "You just can't beat this horse for focus." And I was like, wow. You know, this like really incredible. And then after Kasey's test, we were walking back to his Diesel stall, and there was a full-size truck being pulled up onto a flatbed tow, so it was at an angle, and the chains were rattling and everything, and like you couldn't hear, it was so loud, you couldn't hear, you know, people talking to each other, couldn't hear each other. And I would have never considered just leading my horse past there, because but I mean, Diesel just walked right past. I've never had a horse as quiet as Diesel. I mean, that doesn't say that he's not responsive, but just, I mean, just such an amazing disposition. I mean, it's really, I mean, I almost feel like it's one of his superpowers that he has, you know, such a quiet, focused disposition. And I had a breeder mentor friend of mine say that, you know, horses are born with that. And actually, Kasey, you have had him genetically tested, haven't you? Could you speak about that?
I have, and I will say that he is just the coolest, easiest horse, and especially from my perspective, I would say a true amateur. He makes everything so much easier. He doesn't worry. He doesn't spook. He doesn't care. If honestly, I think an easy up could go blowing across the arena while we were riding a test, and I don't even know that he would do more than sort of like look at it and go, huh, interesting, and go right back to his job. So it makes it, the partnership aspect, it makes it great. Like, you have a safe partner that has never caused me to not trust him. I mean, I can take him trail riding by myself. I always know that he's reliable and dependable, and honestly, nothing ever really seems to faze him, which is very cool from my perspective. I did have him genetically tested, and I know this is a bit of an explosive topic with some breeders, but he did come back as a double curious horse carrying 2 alleles. If there's, I don't want to say a temperament gene, but there's Eidolon Diagnostics has some, they've done quite a bit of research, and there's some evidence that you can actually test for temperament, and he's fell on the double curious side, which essentially meant that if you give one of these double curious horses, a curious horse, if they see something new and novel, they actually are curious about it. They walk up to it. They want to see what it is. A vigilant horse kind of wants to run back and reevaluate from a safe distance. And I would say Diesel's definitely double curious. If something, I mean, you could have a bomb go off, and I think he would walk right over to whatever happened and be like, what was that? And he's not really afraid of anything. So I think this all explains why you can walk him past anything. If there's something new, he walks right up to it. It makes it very easy. In the show ring, he's not afraid of the judge's boost or wind or, flapping tents, or if you're in a tent above, he's not afraid if the tent's flapping above. I mean, he's just very secure and safe, and it makes new experiences actually very fun for me, because I have a horse that actually likes new experiences. So
I love that too. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the foal that we have. We actually had the very first foal, a colt by Diesel, this spring. And we knew without really from day one that we highly suspected that he also had the double curious genes, and we had him tested, and indeed he does. And it's really clear when you look at a group of foals, as we do more and more testing, we'll be able to kind of confirm, and a lot of it is how they're handled. There are ways that experience is so important as well, but there's just no doubt about the temperament characteristics and the genetic components of that. So it's just a fascinating kind of new area for breeding, and we're thrilled to have that in our program. There's no doubt about it. So thanks for having tested for sure.
I know, I would love to have all the Olympic horses tested.
We should try. Yeah, we really should.
We should try it. It would be interesting to see what they came back as.
Definitely. So who's next? What other questions do we have?
Well, Laura, you just kind of mentioned with your foal and stuff, how was the breeding experience with that, with Diesel and everything?
Yeah, it was super. I mean, it's funny because I met Kasey and Candice at the same time, actually, back in the spring of 2017, when we all attended the American Hanoverian Society breeder orientation course at Hilltop Farm in Maryland. And I sat next to Kasey like the first afternoon, and you're always like, what horses do you have? And we realized that not only she had Diesel by Dressage Royal, and I had a mare that was in foal due in another month or two to Dressage Royal. So it's kind of like when you realize you're related to someone through your horses. And, you know, my interest in those bloodlines run really deep. I had a breeding friend and mentor who recommended that I look at Dressage Royal for a Bellissimo mare that I have. I actually have two full sisters, and they're full siblings to the Grand Prix stallion Benedetto. And it's great because I'm able to sort of look and see what crosses have worked well with those lines. And I really like the Donner Halls with that line. So, and you know, when you look at Dressage Royal, a lot of people in the United States aren't as familiar with that stallion. Was privately owned in Germany, and there really wasn't a lot of semen. It was not super easy to get semen here in the U.S. He wasn't promoted the same way, but you know, when I did some research, I realized, I mean, Uno Don Diego is at Iron Spring Farm, and then of course you have Louise Leatherdale Farm owning Damsey. So, you know, that was just huge. And when I looked even deeper at the dam for Diesel, I really think that those of us in breeding should, you know, take a look at that dam line. Diesel's dam was named Hanoverian Mare of the Year, I think. That was like 2013, I think. So Diesel was still a youngster at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of very few dressage mares that have been awarded that honor by the Verband. And it really speaks to the quality of that side, of the dam side on Diesel and Damsey. And the other offspring that she has is and Kasey, you might have to help me pronounce it.
I may pronounce it wrong. Diarina Dianara Vandahella, something like this. I read it.
Yeah, also out of the same mare, Rio Grande, and by Dream of Glory. And she was an international level Grand Prix mare, very, very successful. So I really believed in these lines. And as I learned more and more from Kasey about how her experience and being able to handle Diesel day in, day out. And now she's taking him for collections and, you know, I mean, just loading him. I mean, really A to Z every step of the way. And that just speaks so much to his character. And that was always so important. It's very important to me as a breeder. And the other aspect of it too is when a couple of years later, we all went to Germany again for the Hanoverian breeders course over in Germany. And Dr. Chrisman and Marin arranged for our tour group, the whole course, to go and meet the breeder of Dressage Royal and Damsey, and also to see Dressage Royal in person. And I think he was probably 20, 21 at that time. And I was so impressed with his health and vitality and temperament. And that's really important to me as well. And seeing Damsey compete at such a high level with Helen to the age that he did, doing those freestyles with those levels that are, you know, the technical difficulty levels just as high as they can be, and to just still be competing so strongly was really wonderful, and also very important to me as a breeder. And then I also knew that a full sibling to Dressage Royal was right in Virginia. So I was able to see her in person, and also was so impressed with her health and vitality, and just the quality really shows. And it's there for a lifetime. And that felt really good to me. So we are absolutely thrilled with our Dynamite, who's the name of our colt. And I really, really was hoping to get a bigger walk, and we definitely got that. And we have a beautiful balanced canter. He has a gorgeous head and neck set. He is the first one to greet you and is as easy as pie. And I really don't see how we can ask for more. He's really spectacular. We're very excited. I mean, I feel like he's got all of the genetic components to be a super performer at Grand Prix, and we're really excited to see what the future holds for him. So it's been very gratifying.
So what was your perspective going over to Germany and being able to watch Kasey and Diesel train with Helen?
It was incredible. I mean, I snuck that trip in. I think I was gone 6 days, and it was a tough time to travel. But I was able to do it. And at that point, I had never seen Diesel in person. So to be able to go in and I sort of was like, I'll video, just put me to work, and to be able to stand in the arena and see Kasey and Diesel in training with Helen, and to hear her comments, and to see how he just continues to light up the arena and really compete with other horses at that level was just outstanding. And it just felt so good. And to meet him in person and to get a feel for his temperament, and Kasey will say, here, take him for a walk. I mean, he's an exceptional horse, and being able to travel over there and see that and get a good glimpse of that was just a trip I'll never forget. So yeah, thank you.
We had fun. I'm so glad you were able to come over too.
Yeah, we had a blast.
Yeah, we had fun. It was nice to have you there for a few days.
Yeah, it was great. So hopefully the first of many, many more trips with horses. We'll see what the future holds. So yeah.
And hopefully you get your filly in 2020.
I know. I'm hoping for a keeper filly for myself. I still have my 5-year-old filly by Dressage Royal. She's under saddle right now, and we're super excited about her. And I'm hoping for a Diesel filly. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
So I wanted to go ahead and just kind of open up the floor if anyone else had any comments or questions to ask.
I would like to make a point, actually, if that's okay.
Yeah, go right.
I would really like to kind of express how grateful I am to Helen for, I think she actually really completely made my trip. And because of her, I think my 60 days in Germany just completely exceeded all my hopes and dreams and possible expectations. She is an incredible person, unbelievably kind. I mean, the first day I got there, they gave me a key fob and a gate fob for a key for the gate and key for all of the barn doors and everything. And they just said, come and go as you like. Just make sure you lock up, when you leave. And it was an open training barn for me. And I don't know that would have been the case training with other Olympians in Germany. But she really made the experience just to have an open invitation into her whole training system and her barn and how it's run and how the horses are managed. Also the opportunity to watch. There was a bunch of stallions at her barn. Like I said, she had a 32 stall barn, but she also had horses across the street. So I think about 35 horses went through her facility every day being ridden, worked. And stallions like Escamilo is there, Zoom is there, Veyron, Tesla, Quahu. And for me to be able to watch how they're trained and how they're handled in a big facility was amazing. For her to take me to Herning, Denmark with her was amazing. I mean, I spent probably 13 hours in a car with her, which sort of terrified me at first because she's like you idolize somebody and then you find out, okay, you're going to be in a car alone with them. It's like, what? Gosh, it's kind of intimidating for me. And the car ride flew by. I mean, it felt like we got to Herning in 30 minutes and we just talked the entire time. And it was, for her to be so open was just really made the trip. So I want to just give huge kudos to her. And I don't think I could have had a better experience with anybody in Europe. So yeah, I just thank you, Helen.
Well, and I love that the training will continue, right? I mean, you've got
The training will continue. In fact, we have I'll say Pixie open a virtual lesson on Friday, so 2 days from now, where Helen will watch me on her computer screen and she'll talk to me in my headset and she'll teach me, but it's just she'll be teaching me from Germany. So it's nice that we continue our lessons. It's really nice to have someone like her, really on our team and helping us take these next final steps to the Grand Prix. And also, honestly, I can't wait to host Helen at some point at our, our property at some point in the future and bring her back to SoCal. So that would also be amazing.
It seems like there's some good technology that has come out of the pandemic, right? Where you have access to things more globally, because the remote technology has become so much better.
Yeah, it really has.
It has. And we're all, it definitely has, I think, made a difference on all kinds of, like, even for you, Candice, teaching. I think it's open, at least the people can continue somewhat their normal life, even if it's remote and virtual.
Teaching lab, though, online is terrible. So, Kasey, what's that?
Oh, you go ahead. You're good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, are there, like, aside from the riding, like any best practices that were like different in Germany than here that you will, continue, that you learned and will continue?
I will say a couple things. One, Helen is very traditional in her training methods, and she's tiny. I don't know that she weighs more than 100 pounds. I mean, honestly, she is micro, but she is so effective as a rider. And this was honestly one of the reasons I wanted to go train with her, because if she can manage these big stallions and she's so petite, clearly she's figured out how to be an effective rider. So, that to me was kind of one takeaway. There were no tricks at her barn. She always wore little spurs. There was nothing that would make you look twice at what was going on. It was very classical horse training. There's no aqua treadmill, there's no treadmill, there's no Eurosizer. It was literally just training and methodical, logical, systematic training for the horses. And so I'd say that was kind of a really big takeaway for me. And also they have hard surfaces over there. I feel like, at least in California, we're so paranoid about having our horses on nothing but the best footing. And the horses were always walked, 10 to 20 minutes a day they were concrete tiles. And I think it's actually really important. It's important, as they said, for, the horse's tendons. So this was also very eye-opening for me. I feel like, everybody here is afraid the horse is going to slip and fall down on concrete. And over there, it's literally just a way of life. And, I would say all the German team horses after Tokyo they were all sound and they were all, strong. And all the horses at Helen's were rock solid. And I think that there is something to be said for actually having our horses on hard surfaces.
So I guess kind of just a final little wrap-up question. Kasey, what are your aspirations with you and Diesel in the long run?
That's a good question. Well, I would say first, I2. I think we're going to do the I2 at the thermal CDI. We won't be in the international part of the show. We would be doing the national part. I believe we'll be doing the test HC, as Helen recommended, to get our feet back into the show ring. And then I believe we're also going to do the show in March in thermal, the other CDI, and those we will go for scores for the I2. And then Diesel has about a 5-month window for breeding, where he's available for North American breeders. And we're planning to either resume the I2 or step into the Grand Prix at the end of this year. And next year, my plan is to not offer him for breeding so that we can focus entirely on sport. We also have hopes to go to Wellington one season and Amelia and I have been loosely talking about maybe going in 2023 for, she has her up and coming Grand Prix Harvey, and we'd like to get some Grand Prix under both their belts before we went to Wellington. It's a big trip. It's obviously it's the other side of the US for us. So our country makes it difficult with this sport. It's a really big country and the sport is very small. So, and travel with horses is very expensive. So my plan in the short term is to get to Grand Prix with him. And in the long term, I would really like to try and be competitive in the International Grand Prix. And, you know, it would be amazing if I could maybe go back to Europe and compete at some CDIs at some point. I'm lucky Diesel's 11 this year. And if he's anything like Damsey, we have 8 more years to learn the Grand Prix. So I'm hoping this is a long enough time for me to figure it out.
That's great.
That's great.
Well, Kasey, thank you so much for doing this with us. You know, I hope it gets to be really educational for our members. And it was also just really great, you know, hearing about you and Diesel's travels and getting to learn all about that.
Yeah, it was, I'm very lucky. You know, honestly, I think any rider would benefit from doing a kind of an immersion experience like this, and to go to the really country in the world. I feel Germany can have 5 Olympic teams. You know, they have a very deep field and a huge pool of up and coming riders and horses, and you know, dressage is part of their culture, and to go over to an environment like that and be immersed in it, I am just really lucky and very grateful, and I'm very happy to have shared this experience.
It's fun to be a part of it. It's
Kasey.
really
And it was so fun that you came too.
great. This is what it's all about.
It's fun. I know these horses change our lives, and you know, it's a magical journey that you can be on with them.
Yeah.
They take, you know, it's incredible. So thank